In this video I'm going to show you the basics of setting up clothing for Genesis 2 female Victoria 6. Now before you get started, it's good to know the difference between Victoria 6 and our Genesis 2 female. Victoria 6 is a morph on the Genesis 2 female. So when you build clothing, you should really build it for Genesis 2, and then when it comes time after you've loaded it in and set it up and everything, then you can test it with Victoria 6, and if it works, great, you have no more work to do, but if it needs help, then you can go in and modify the morph, clean it up, that kind of thing. So, to get started, you would load your Genesis 2 base female, and you would get ready to export her out for use in your modeler as reference, to build your clothing, that kind of thing. Before you export her, though, it'd be good to know that she's a sub-D model. A sub-D meaning subdivision. Basically, the model is modeled at a lower resolution, about 20,000 polygons, somewhere in that range. But we turn on sub-D, makes it high resolution, and you can see these solid black lines represent the actual geometry, and the little gray lines in between represent the new resolution that's dynamically created in Dev Studio. You can even raise your subdivision level up even higher to add more resolution if you want it. So anyway, before you export Genesis 2 base to build clothing for, you might as well make it low resolution. For morphs you have to do this, but for clothing it's not necessary, but it will make it, a smaller hit on your resources in your modeling application. So to do that, just change this to base and then export your model. Now I've already gone in and created a real fancy outfit for my figure, so I'm going to load that in now. You just import that. And once it's imported, you just have a quick decision to make. If your clothing is meant to be sub-D clothing, which isn't terribly common, but sometimes people do it. If it is meant to be sub-D clothing, you need to convert it to sub-D right now before you run transfer utility. That will give you better results in your transfer. If it's not, then you can do it as it is. This clothing item is high enough resolution, I don't need it to be subdivided as well. So I'm just going to run the transfer utility. And you can find that by going to Edit, Object, Transfer Utility. It's also, if you're using the city limits layout, it's also over here. And when you run it, the source item will be Genesis 2 female, and your target will be the bodysuit, of course, or whatever your item is. And then the projection templates, basically how these work is, we've created some templates that are slightly optimized for your clothing weight maps. And so there will be various templates here. Right now I just have hair ones, long and short, and then a full body one. I'm going to go ahead and use a full body one. If you don't use anything at all, that's fine. The results might be fine. If they're not great, then you can always try another template and see how that turns out. But the rest of the settings under here, I don't need to show them because I'm just going to use the default settings. But I hit accept, and then it'll go through and set up my clothing. And you'll see it's now showing up as a figure with bones and everything. And if you dial up morphs on Genesis 2 female, you'll see it'll automatically project to your clothing item. Victoria 6 it also works on. This is beautiful frumpwear on Victoria 6. So now that my clothing is all set up, I just need to save it. And let's go ahead and test it as well, see if it bends okay. And while it's not often that your head gets kinked that way, it works pretty well. So I am happy with my bodysuit, and I want to save it. So I just select it, go to File, Save As, Support Asset, Figure, Prop Asset. So you'll use this for figures or props, whichever, obviously from the name. But this is how you save your assets. You click that, and it's going to have you browse to where you want it to go. Now, my path right here is my dad's 3D beta library, People Genesis 2 female clothing. Let me go ahead and drill up a little bit. So I'm in my library, people, Genesis 2 female. There's a clothing folder here. And if you're doing hair, you'd have a hair one there as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a folder for my product called Awesomeware. And inside there, I will create my file Awesome Body Suit. Hit enter, and that'll pop up the figure prop asset save options. And the asset directory up here you can kind of ignore. If you chose a map directory when you're saving it, it'll just default to that map directory. And the vendor name, that will autofill with your vendor if you filled out your authorship information under Edit Preferences, or hit F2 to pop that up. And that's kind of handy. You might as well just set that up one time and then you don't have to do this every time. And then your product name is going to be Awesomeware. And this is my awesome bodysuit. Now when I chose my template, when I first set up the clothing, it was for Follower Wardrobe full body outfit. And so that actually works, so I can just leave that as it's set. But if these were shoes or something like that, then I could just go in and say wardrobe, footwear, or whatever. Okay, everything else you can kind of leave as it is for now, and then you just hit accept, and it is now saved. And if I go ahead and remove this so it's not there, go into my content library, clothing, Awesomeware. There's my bodysuit, and I can load it in. Everything's great. So now you've created your first outfit for Genesis 2 female.